So today I want to talk to you about managing your expectations. And what I mean by that is we all have expectations of ourselves and others, and how will we manage those can impact how happy we are or how frustrated we are. So really I want to talk to you about how can you manage those expectations. So again, it's really going to impact you on how well you manage your expectations in your level of happiness. Because obviously, if you feel like you're not meeting your expectations or other people aren't meeting your expectations, then it's going to result in kind of frustrations and things like that. So, what are some things and how can you do this to manage those expectations? You know, well, there's a couple things you can do. uh, as you learn to manage your expectations, you're going to learn that you're happier, because as you manage your expectations better, you're going to feel like you're winning versus losing. So, what are those things you can do? Well, first thing you need to do is determine what your expectations are. So, if you have goals or ambitions, kind of apply your expectations to those and see, first of all, are your goals and ambitions realistic? Because if you really have unrealistic goals, then you're really not going to meet your expectation. You're going to find yourself being very critical of yourself. You're going to be stressed all the time, and really probably going to have that internal dialogue that's kind of telling you you're a failure, things like that. So the first thing you got to do is determine what your expectations are in relationship to goal setting and your ambitions in life. Next, think about what your expectations for specific situations. So uh, you may have expectations of others, but if they don't understand those expectations or those expectations are unrealistic, then you're going to find yourself disappointed and frustrated quite a bit in other people. So you really need to think about what you expect from others, and are you realistic and are you communicating that well? Next is you really have to be willing to adjust your expectations. So uh, we call this reframing, meaning that you can choose to reframe your expectations kind of within your reality. So if you have expectations, you may want to reframe them to look more for positive things and tie it back to your personal perceived reality. And are those expectations, are they serving you or are they hindering you? Now, another thing you need to do is really avoid judging yourself too harsh. Just ask yourself, would I say what I'm saying to myself to someone I love? So often we are very critical of ourselves in the context of judging ourselves. And we treat ourselves in ways that we probably not treat others like. So think when you're having that kind of that internal dialogue, being critical of yourself, ask yourself, these words that I'm telling myself, would I tell this to someone I love? Most likely you're not. So we have to learn to really kind of uh, not judge ourselves so harsh. Next thing is related to your expectations is you really need to avoid making assumptions. Often we are disappointed with our expectations because we make the wrong assumptions. So if you have expectations of someone else or something situation, if you're making assumptions, then your expectations may not be met. You're going to feel disappointed, frustrated, those negative emotions. Next thing is remember that social media is not always reality. So one of the things that frustrates me is social media. People get on social media and they kind of start to get the sense of like everyone else's life is really, really good, and why is mine average or even below average? And the reality of it is social media, people are only portraying the very best light of themselves. They aren't portraying a reality of what is normal. So remember, if you set your expectations to yourself, if you're using social media as kind of that yardstick on how successful you are, how happy you are, it's really not an accurate tool to be using. So really remember, social media, it does not benefit you when it comes to kind of gauging how well you're doing in life. So again, I tell people all the time that social media usually just brings about depression and frustration. So really don't use it as something to help establish and kind of weigh your expectations. Next is you have to communicate, in fact, over communicate your expectations. So if you have expectations as others, you really need to make sure you're articulating that to them. But really, you have to probably be speaking it much more than you think you would. Uh, that really gives them the opportunity to really to understand your expectations and meet you where your expectations are at. Because, for example, they can say, I understand that, and we're going to strive for that. Or they may say, no, I think those expectations are unrealistic. So let's redefine those expectations. Another thing you need to be aware of is you're going to be disappointed from time to time. So you really need to plan for that disappointment. And that's going to help you because if you're planning for disappointment, it's going to help you have a plan in place to kind of counteract that. So if you know that there's going to be times that people are going to disappoint you, how, how are you going to respond to that? What are you going to do? Okay, and that includes yourself again. So if you disappoint yourself, remember what words are you telling yourself? How hard are you being on yourself? And would you be saying that to other people? Now, if you have expectations of yourself and others, you also need to consider the expectations that people may have of you. And that requires you to understand what they expect. So again, it goes both ways. That's important to understand where that communication comes from. So if you're in a relationship and you feel like the relationship's not to the level you want it to be, it may be because there's a disconnect between your expectations of each other. So remember, people have expectations of you too. And to serve those you love, it's important that you meet those expectations. And so therefore you have to consider what their expectations are and have conversations around that. So what are some things you can do right now? Well, again, you can set aside some time to think about what are your expectations for yourself and others, and and are they realistic, these expectations? Are your standards too high? Uh, and are you really understanding what you expect of other people and what they expect of you? In addition to that, you may find in doing this that there's people you want to have a better relationship with, and you need to have a conversation with them around expectations. So determine to have that conversation with those people in your life. If you identify this as something that's maybe not necessarily holding your relationship back, but also not allowing your relationship to be the best it can, then commit to yourself that you're going to have that conversation around expectations. Then finally, again, social media, it paints this picture of everything's going great for everyone else, and it really can be detrimental to yourself. It can cause you to set expectations that are unrealistic, but also can cause you to be really critical of yourself when things aren't going just as perfect as planned. So hopefully these are some things that help. And remember, you're about yourself and your own growth is up to you. But there's some things that you can do to help, tools that are out there available. If there's anything we can do for you, just let us know. Thank you.